Welcome back to another Wednesday on the Pagan Perspective. I'm your Wednesday host, Yeka, and this week we are talking about our living spaces or homes and how that relates to our practice or path as pagans. So I'm really excited that this topic came up because even though it's ostensibly my topic, it actually comes from a brainstorming session that the hosts, that the members of the collaborative did together. And then Kara sort of arranges when topics come up and don't come up and all of that. And so it actually works out really beautifully, great timing for what's going on in my life right now, in my family's life. So I'll share a little bit about that with you, but I'm just very excited that to get the chance to share this with you right now. So in this video, the way I'm going to approach this is first kind of talk about the general concept of our living spaces as our homes, as our primary environment for our practices and paths, and then move into a little bit on what my personal situation with that is, and from there, some of the specific tools that I use or one could use to help them in using the personal space as a tool for the practice, and then actually talk room by room about the specific spaces. So to start with, I want to say that I think what the home is, and what our specific needs and goals from it are going to be really different between different people and at different places and stages in our life. So what we need from that space, or what one might need from that space when they're a kid living at home or in a college dorm or with roommates, or one's first apartment, or for instance my situation with a family with young children, I imagine is going to be a very different need from the space and a need in my life than what it might be in 20 years for me, and very different than somebody else who's the same age as me, who's just on a very different life path. So I don't think that there's a right and a wrong way. It just kind of depends on the individual and the need of the individual, and the community that they live in, whether that's a family by themselves, with animals, with roommates, whatever it is, whoever's living there, what their needs are. So our homes are sort of if you think about circles within circles, they're our deepest environment, one could say. So there's the ecosystem that we're part of on the outside. There's the garden, and there's the street block that we live on, or if we live rurally, the area that we live in, and the just the climate, the particular, are we in a desert climate, and all of that. And those things all really impact us. But what we interact with most often is our home environment, or where we're living. And for some people, the work environment is a really big piece too, but we tend to have a little bit more influence on the home environment. So that's kind of why I'm focusing on that a little bit. And I think of it as a place that we have the opportunity to really focus in on whatever our goals are. The way that we feel, the environment that we're in can have a really big impact on us. Sort of the classic example is try to feel good, try to feel content and happy with life when you've just been hit over the head. Like our physical reality can be so influential and impactful on our internal reality. So a living situation, the lighting, the way you move from space to space, does it make you move in a certain way, right? For somebody who climbing or walking is not very easy. Having stairs or split space might really create a barrier for them, where they have to face something that just gets in the way of the flow of their day. For instance, that's like a negative way of looking at it, like a negative example. But one could also say, certain colors might make you feel good and really remind you and inspire you, and having that be the color theme of the space that you're in could be very empowering or focusing or that sort of thing. So, for our personal situation, I think I mentioned this briefly in a video back in the spring in like April or something. But our family recently, so my partner and I recently bought land, and that land has a little cabin on it. And we will be moving our soon to be family of 4 up there. And it's so this whole topic of how we use space and what is the purpose of space, and how can that help us towards our goals and the way we live, that's been really big on our mind, because we do have to make a lot of changes. It's just a little cabin, totally off grid. So we've been thinking a lot, not only in terms of sort of the zone 0 space, and that comes from the concept in permaculture, where we think of zones of how much time do you spend in each space for how much sort of maintenance and awareness you give to each space. So usually it starts with the zone 1, right outside your door. You're going to pay more attention to those plants that you're planting or whatever's in that space than zone 2. It's a little further out, etc. But zone 0 that's inside the house. That's where you are constantly. So in addition to thinking about that zone 0, which is, how does where's the bedroom, and how do we make sure that there's enough space and all of that, we're thinking a lot about the systems of a home, the systems of a house that we have to survive, that in an urban environment one might not give very much thought to, such as, where's our electricity going to be coming from? Are we going to be turning on lights? Are we going to have the internet, which we will, by the way? And where does our waste go, and where do we get water from, and how does that move into the space, and how does that move out of the space, and what do we really need? So the big one that we've been working on, and have just finished a huge chunk of, is the water system, because as I mentioned, totally off grid, so there's no public water coming to us, and although drilling a well would be a possibility just from a hydrogeologic perspective, it's not from a financial perspective. That'd be more than a year's gross income for us to be able to even, best case scenario, to drill a well. So we have to do rainwater catchment and store all of that water for the whole year, which is something I'm very comfortable with. That's how I grew up. I was raised that way. But we still have to set that system up, and think about, how much can we catch given the roof that we have, and how many tanks do we already have there. So we already had 5,000 gallons already filled up, and a roof that can catch 9. But that is nowhere near. That's actually about half of what we hope to have. So our goal is to have 20,000 gallons a year. So we just finished building a big cistern, which is another 5,000, or it's actually 5,300 gallons. And so that was, that's what we've been doing, and really focusing on that, which has been a little bit of a challenge, just because you can't see my belly here, but it's pretty big. So I'm 7 months along. So my ability to participate in that has become more and more limited as time goes on. So what we're doing is we're spending the time really focusing on that observation and that planning and that dreaming about the usage of space. And then, of course, I'm also getting to the place where that nesting instinct is really kicking in. So we're living here at our apartment in the city until we have the place fixed up and we can go ahead and move over there, but though that nesting instinct's really strong, and so that want to fix things up and make sure everything is good and prepared for when the baby arrives, and that everything will be able to flow is really big on my mind. So I mentioned I was going to talk about tools, and I think I want to step back just a second before I do to talk about what one might use the tools for. So for us, we want to create a lifestyle that fits what our values are, and helps us to focus on the things that we really want to focus on. So a big focus for us as a pagan family is the seasons, the wheel of the year, living in connection with nature and with intention for that. So a lot of the things that we are doing inside our home at the moment to help with that is to have us be present with the wheel of the year, and really deeply experiencing that. So some of the tools that I'm going to talk about are things that help us to really be reminded and present with the seasons, and also to be able to have the opportunity to focus on the things that we want to be focusing on, which is sharing time with each other, which is being able to participate in our interests and hobbies and be learning, and to I guess sustainability would be another one in there. So to really focus in on those. So some tools that we use, a big one is smell in the home. So the moment that one walks into the home, into our house, there is some sort of smell. And of course, there's the smell of, like, houses have particular smells, and people have particular smells that you kind of forget about if you're the one who lives there, unless you go away for a while and then you come back. And that's a nice, I think that can be subconsciously comforting for that. But I'm talking about more intentional ones. So I use a diffuser with essential oils, and I don't particularly buy into a lot of the pretty grand claims around essential oils, but I do think that they, some of them, smell fantastic, and that smells can be a trigger. They can really trigger emotions and memories and things like that. So throughout the year, I switch out which particular smells that we're using. So right now, in this summer, in the summer, we've been doing a lot of citrusy kind of smells, and I'm moving into a little bit more of the earthy ones as it's first autumn now. So what I've been doing a lot of bergamot is the one that's been in, and as we move in further into winter, some of the more pine smells, and then some of the spicy, like cloves and things like that. And so we'll change the smell throughout the season. But I also change the smell depending on what else is going on in the home, the time of day, or what we're trying to do. If I'm trying to put the toddler down to sleep and she's been having a hard time sleeping, I might put something calming like lavender or something like that. Another big tool that we use is altars, and I've got an altar in almost every room. And when I say altar, what it is for me is a space that has an intentional, dedicated purpose, right? That it has objects that mean something, and whatever it might be to the elements or the season, or specific emotions or feelings, ideas, love, or the transition between summer and fall, the harvest, that sort of thing. For people who work with deities or spirits or things like that, it might be something like that. But it could be anything from a shelf space to even a wall that has artwork on it, that's got paintings or photographs, things like that. So we use altars and change them out so that there's this balance between the comfort that I was talking about, but also something novel, something that our mind, our eye catches for a second and is a reminder, oh yeah, that thing that's important to me, that thing that I've been focusing on, this particular season or this particular idea. So we've got those in a small kind of mini form. And at different points in my life, I had more elaborate setup ones, but at the stage that we're at, where little hands can reach pretty much anything, it's got to be kind of small and out of the way. But also, I want it to be accessible to the children as well, just on a visual and an emotional level. So it's that interesting balance. And then, of course, the decor, I guess you'd call it. So I switch things out with the seasons, with the 8 seasons. Like today, because we're in the transition time, moving from Lamasan to Mabon of summer into fall, so it's early autumn. I put out some of the sunflower things that we have. I mean, the sunflowers are doing great at the moment in the garden, but I moved some of those inside and have been just changing out the colors and things like that. And of course, that's sort of a slow process as the season changes itself, but also our building up of what resources we have, because I can't change out the sheets every season if I only have 3 pairs of sheets to choose from, that kind of thing. But that can be helpful. Where we put plants, what do we have hanging, all of those things, that slight bit of novelty balanced with the familiar and the comfort. And then a big one, which I don't think there's even time in this video because I've already gone way longer than I try not to make the videos into huge epic documentary novel length videos, but is food. And so that really deserves a topic of itself. But what we are eating, we try and eat as seasonally as possible. So a lot of right now, this time of year, most of our produce comes from the garden, and then our animal products, our meat and dairy, are almost all local as well. And so the availability of that changes with the season. But the spices that we choose to use, the teas that we're drinking, the things that that we're nourishing ourselves and tasting every day and enjoying, are tools that we use in our living spaces in our home to help us with whatever the goal of our path or practice at that moment is. So now I want to talk a little bit about room by room, and it's going to be different for everybody. So I'm going to share what it is for me and for my partner, who we've been living together for 7 years now. So we've kind of our styles and use of space have blended and kind of grown together over time. But a lot of it is, this reflects kind of our previous use of space as well, when we did live separately. But I'm going to start with what is kind of the most important room for me when it comes to intention, which is surprisingly the bathroom. Because the bathroom is where I and many other people start our day and end our days. So that is the place where, if everything else is messy in the house, and cluttered and all of that, that's the one place for me that can't be. That's just, I want that to really be, that every bit of it is an intentional. And so that's where a lot of the centering and focus and the intention setting is done. Now, if I had the luxury of building a house, I would actually split up a lot of the functions of the bathroom. I would have a bathroom and a toilet room as nearby but separate things. And then I would also have the laundry room slash closet connected to that as well. Just in terms of the way that the flow of that works. But the going back to the bathroom, especially the shower time, or even just brushing teeth or that sort of thing, is when I do a lot of that focusing. So we do have a little. Ours right now just has a little shelf, and that's pretty much all the storage we have, because that's where our laundry machine is, which is one of those mini Pandas, one of those semi-automatics that just fills up from the shower and drains back into the shower. And then our clothing, which we have more clothing, but we just keep out whatever we're using at the time. So we have 4 drawers between the 2 adults. And, we'll switch what we need as the seasons change. And then the laundry baskets and all of it. So everything is in there. But we have got the one little shelf. And on that shelf, I keep some things, we write notes to each other on the mirror and things like that. But little stones that are important. And that's where a lot of the oils are kept. They're just reminders of important things to us, and then candles and things like that. And in the winter, many of our plants, our house plants that live outside in the summer, come back in, and the bathroom is the brightest room in our house right now, so everything goes in there in terms of plants. So it's a very crowded area. And then the second one is the kitchen, and as I mentioned, we try really hard to do kind of seasonal food, but that is the place of focus of life and death, and a lot of the symbols that we have in there, in our altar space, and then just sort of around the kitchen itself, are representations of that. We have some skulls and things like that are important about death, for us, as well as painted eggs and kind of classic symbols like that. But that's where, food, which I've talked about a lot on this channel before, about life and death being really so connected that you can't even separate the two. But food is where the nourishment for our life comes from. But it is also the passing on of others, whatever that other is. It's another being, independent of whatever your particular species values are or aren't. Something else is dying to come into to be part of our life. So it's a great place for celebrating that deep, deep connection. So then, living room space, the way that we have it set up, and have at all of the different places that we've lived together, is that the dining room, living room, communal space is one big space. And in this particular house, the kitchen is actually a separate room, and that's something that I wish, like, if I could change one thing about this is a tiny space. It's like only 500 square feet, but if I could change one thing, it would be to open up the wall where the kitchen is into the main space. And that's the space where the living and the sharing and the most of the time is spent. That's where we keep the computers, and we have a wall that we shine the projector onto. And so, I guess focus-wise, that's where the most seasonal focus is. That's where, the couch, the spread on the couch, that, I was talking about right now, that I put the sunflower cloth out to celebrate the sunflowers. That's where we hang, a lot of the harvest our winter squashes, when those finish developing, those will go and mostly actually be on display until we eat them in the main living space. That's where I do the main smells and all of that stuff. The bedroom for me is just a bedroom. It's the one room in the house that I don't put. There's no altar. There's pretty much nothing but the bed. It's we've got our bed, the toddler's bed, a blackout curtain, and a peg for me to hang my glasses, and a charger for the phone, which we use as an alarm clock, and we put the red light on it. That was something I forgot to mention with the tools, but was lighting. Anyways, but I did a video about pagan technology last year that I talk a lot about that in. So I will link that if you want to know more about my thoughts on light. Um, and then I guess the last kind of category room would be office spaces or private library. Um, and right now, because we live in such a tiny space, there isn't a lot of private space. I mentioned this is a 500 square foot space, and we'll be moving into what will feel giant to us as an 800 square foot. But there isn't a lot of that personal space. We do try and carve that out, but a lot of times it is separating ourselves physically, going out and spending time in the garden, or uh, under the headphones or something like that to find that personal space. And that's just what it's like in at this point in our lives. When I was a kid and lived with my family at home, my bedroom was a much more important space. And as our children grow, we will be trying to create spaces for them, but it probably won't end up being the traditional bedroom space, because where we're moving into, it's going to be the same situation with tiny bedrooms. And when I say tiny, I mean tiny. Our bedroom is 7 by 8 foot. Like, it wouldn't, today's codes would not allow for it. This is a very old house. It's from the 40s. It is the size of a walk-in closet for a lot of people. It's it's only 2 feet wider than our bathroom. So anyways, that's kind of my take on spaces and the way we use spaces. The thing that's most important for me, I talked about the themes in each space, though, is that however it's set up in such a way that I don't have to spend more time doing something I don't want to be doing, and be able to spend more time doing things that I do want to be doing. So I'm going to use the example of coming home. One of the things I don't want to be spending a lot of time is straightening and cleaning, and that's something that has to happen in a home. But I'd like to minimize that because it's something I don't actually enjoy doing. So when I come home, the first thing I do is take my shoes off and put my wallet and keys down. Then I usually go to the bathroom where I change out of whatever I was wearing into my bathrobe. So knowing that that is the cycle that I have, there's an opportunity to catch all of those places where mess could be created. So the shoes are stored by the door, so that when I take them off, they go directly into, we have just a little bin where the shoes are kept, instead of them just coming off and then later me having to pick them up and put them over where they go. Same thing with the keys and wallet. There's a spot right next to the door that they go in. In the winter, the coats go there too. Actually, the keys and wallets stay in the coat most of the time in the winter. In the bathroom, that's where I just said the word bed coat. What is it called? A bathrobe is kept, and that's where the dirty clothes bin is, so that I don't take it off at the bathroom, and then the traditional place for it would be in each person's individual bedroom. But then I don't have to walk it from the bathroom to the bedroom, where it wouldn't fit anyways in our house, but just as an example. And I know that this kind of sounds like it doesn't have to do with paganism on the surface, but because one of my focuses is trying to live intentionally and spend the time focused on the things that I want to be focused on, it does tie back in, because there I created a flow and saved time, that I can then use to do the things more important to me, to be present when the rainstorm comes in, to spend time with the family, to play D&D, play whatever it is that is the passion that we want to be working on. So I think, spaces have an incredible power to really facilitate what we value, whatever that is. So I'm really excited to have gotten to share this with you. As you can see, I am losing the light pretty quickly. Hopefully this is our monsoon season and we will be getting, it looks like we might be getting a little bit more rain, which we would love because we need to catch more in that cistern. And I'd love to hear from you folks, particular tools, thoughts that you have in the comments. And as you've already heard from the other hosts this week, we are taking the regular hosts are taking a 2-week break for the collab's anniversary. We're going into year 10, which is amazing. And actually, incidentally, this is my 200th video with the channel, so that's kind of exciting. But we will be back with the regular videos in September. And until then, take care.